Hello everyone. Now we continue our story. Father, Son, and Violin. Chapter 9, the number 2 story. I became a devil harming everybody around me. Last time I talked about I stayed overnight with a real switchman, a young man I met at the railway. This is continuing the story we finished last time. It's too noisy. When I found out he was also one of the educated youth, I asked, "You also have been one of the educated youth?" Thus, the thing of sending off the elder brothers and sisters to the countryside appeared to me again. In the late 60s and early 70s, almost all middle school and high school graduates, the former Red Guards, were sent to the countryside as so-called educated youth to be re-educated by the peasants. As a man of my age, who could escape that glory? However, I was unlucky. I stayed only a short period before I managed to come here. John nodded, with a playful smile from his small, narrowing eyes. Our great leader Chairman Mao teaches us great achievement can be made in the vast world, while you hide yourself in such a little hut. Not bored? I teased him. Bored? No, not at all. Just the opposite. John looked rather serious, more serious than needed. There is nothing I could do in that vast world, but in here, this little hut, I can read enormous books. The world in the books is far more vast than the vast world. It is indefinitely vast, endless, with no limitations. John pulled out a book from beneath his bed. Look, see what this is. David Copperfield by Dickens. He passed the book to me with excitement. I, as a boy, having grown up under the red flag, have never read a foreign book. I turned the pages randomly to show my politeness, and disapprovingly passed it back to him. He did not take the book from my hand, but added, "This was my favorite book when I was your age. I have gone through it quite a few times. Every time I've read it, I felt I was the little David. Thanks to it, I overcame all my loneliness and sadness." Seeing me still hesitating, he insisted, "Take it with you and read it, but promise me not to damage it or dirt it, and make sure you return it to me when you finish reading." In response to his fervency, I just had to turn the pages again, this time taking a look at some illustrations. I did that for I felt I had to give him some respect, especially when the sweet potato I had last night was not yet out. John looked at my wounds on my face and hands sympathetically, hesitated for a moment, but still suggested, "How about I take you home? I will try to talk to your parents. We've got 36 minutes until the next real switching. 35 minutes, I mean." He paused, and then complained with anger. "What gives them the right to beat a kid like this? Just because they're parents?" Immediately, I explained again that my parents were not responsible for my wounds, at least not entirely. I also made up another story that I was just betting with my brother Danshin that I could stay outside all by myself without going home for 2 days. Right, I see and understand." He imitated a tone of someone from a movie, as he did before when he showed that he was saying one thing but meaning another. At lunchtime, he let me share some food from his lunchbox. After lunch, he joked seriously, "You have had my food. You should work for me too. As the book says, there is no such thing as a free lunch." After that announcement, he went out to pull the rail fence down at the road crossing. After the train passed, I gave him a hand pulling the fence up. To my surprise, The fence was much heavier than I thought. Close to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I stood by the road crossing, stretching my leg like a duck, expecting my family to pass. I remembered the whole family planned to go see a movie at 4 o'clock. A movie with the only film star in Chinese theater at that time, the Prince Shahrukh from Cambodia. Half an hour later, my family showed up. The little lion, my younger brother than him, was the vanguard, followed by my parents, then at the tail, my brother Danxin. I waved a little yellow rail flag to draw their attention, but it failed. The little lion thoughtlessly looked at me like an unknown distant star in the universe. They were followed by the parents, who also showed little concern, as if I were somebody else's dog or cat. This led me to believe that they had agreed to have the same attitude towards me before they went out. I was so anxious that I almost yelled out, Meanwhile, my wisdom prompted me to pull down the rail fence, blocking my brother Danxin. He stopped, staring down at his toes. Seeing that, the little lion retreated. He bent down and get through the fence, and dragged his eldest brother. Come on, let's go, or we will be late for the movie. Seeing 2 sons were on the other side of the fence, Mother also stopped. Father walked towards a few more steps, realizing he had lost his function as the family locomotive, and turned his head around. Instantly, a kind of joy, a joy of victory and hope, emerged in me. Hence, I made a decision. Make sure they do not see the movie. Until then, Jiang had not noticed. I pulled the fence down by myself. He rushed out with an ugly face to scold me for taking work as play and quickly pulled the fence up. Then he noticed that he was surrounded by my family. His ugly face suddenly turned much friendlier. My mother stared at him inquiringly and questioned, Who are you? What are you? What's the relationship between you and my son? Jiang Nansha immediately introduced himself, including, although not old enough yet to be a leading class, working class was regarded to be the leading class at that time. Surely not an anti-revolutionary. Seeing father approaching him, Jiang added, I'm an old friend of your son. It was me who invited him to stay overnight. It's not his fault. I'm sorry to have caused your worry. I sincerely apologize. Father intentionally avoided eye contact with Jiang. He urged mother to go to the cinema. Mother looked troubled, and her eyes turned red. However, unwillingly, she followed father and walked away. My father's attitude toward me must have enraged Jiang. He suddenly raised his voice, shouting, Just because you're parents, you can abuse your child like this? Those words were like electric shock to my mom. She turned back and rushed in front of Jiang. Who abused him? Let's make it clear. Again, father pressed mother. It's not worth wasting our time here. Watching the movie is the main issue today. Let's go. Sorry, you don't abuse your son. Only consider him less important than a movie. Though Jiang used sarcastic language to keep a sense of humor, his serious congested facial expression revealed his agitation and anger. Obviously, Jiang's sarcasm incited mother a great deal. She neglected father's pullback, stepped closer towards Jiang, and argued. How do you know I take my son as less important as a movie? Who has been feeding him and raising him every day until now? How much do you know my family affairs? Today, I may as well forget the movie. Let's talk until it becomes absolutely clear. Hearing mother say, forget the movie, a joyous victory flooded my mind. Now is the time to please mom by turning my spear to Jiang. I roared at him. How dare you to talk to my mom like this? Who invited you into my family business? You stop sticking your nose in other people's affairs like a dog bites rats. Dog bites rats. by turning my weapon around, enraged mother a little, but not father, not a bit. He made his last effort to hustle mother to get going with him to the cinema, but failed. He walked away all by himself. My baby brother followed father at a distance, and frequently turned his head back towards us. I dare not check John's reaction towards my abnormal attitude of biting the hand that fed me. Thank God, at that moment, a train was drawing near. John pulled down the rail crossing fence, with mother and Danshin on the other side. Through the successive clearings between the moving carriages, I saw the shadow walls of mother and Danshin get smaller and smaller as they moved towards home. Combined with the rhythm of a train wheel rumble, my heart palpitated intensively. Bam-bam, bam-bam, bam-bam. After the train was gone, I thoughtfully offered my help to pull the fence up. Soon after, I apologized for the crude and reckless words just spit out from my mouth, and expressed that for tournament I was willing to work there for 2 days for nothing except rice and bed. John paid little attention to what I was saying, as he was in a state of profound thinking. Your parents, too, are intellectuals. How can they also? He breathed, bewildered. Like that, I stayed with John for 2 more days. Little by little, he told me about himself. Jian Nansha was from an intellectual family. In the year 1957, his father was given one of the right-wing headgears. The same as all the other villains' right wings, his father was sent to be transformed far away from home. Immediately, his mother had to draw a distinctive boundary between herself and right-wing husband by divorcing him and throw herself into a working class's embrace. After the family's reorganization, Jian Nansha suffered much maltreatment from the new family man. To put it into clear words, frequently suffering from beatings. When the family contradiction rose to a non-reconciliatory level, John, as an elementary pupil, had to give up the family, or more correctly, leave his mother. Through the introduction of his school teacher, he was adopted by a working-class family, the family with only a daughter that wanted a son so badly. John had not seen his parents since. When he was a high school freshman, the Cultural Revolution started. He stayed inside and immersed himself passionately in his book world without taking part in any revolutionary activities until he was sent to the countryside as an educated youth. After a short while, he found it to be a pure waste of time and life, so he had excuse to return back to the city. Somehow, he got himself acquainted with the former master of the little hut, the one I used to know, and replaced him in this job. Afterwards, I discovered John had concealed a portion of the facts, which I will explain in later chapters. His story made me understand why he yelled so furiously at my parents for their ill treatment of me, as he, too, used to be a severely abused child. In a way, we were 2 bitter gourds on the same cane. John also told me his father was a writer, and his dream was to follow his father's footsteps and become a writer. Very confidently, he said, "The most important book I want to write in my life is my father, because I'm very proud of him." John's small, narrowing eyes shined when he said that. John's words shook my heart and also aroused a kind of jealousy. Yes, how wonderful if one has a father that he can be proud of, even though that father may not be a Communist Party member, but a right-wing. A few days later, father went back to his May 7 card school. I, as a little bird with immature wings, returned to the nest. Another few days has passed. Gradually, my wounds were recovering, but just when everything seems to go back to normal, another mishap started in the school. To be continued. Next story 3. I got teacher now in trouble. Okay, I tell the story next time. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.